We're live.
Let me make sure it's up on here.
Oh no.
It may not go until right at 3.
Look at her reaching for me.
Perfect.
No free plugs.
No free plugs.
10 seconds in.
I'm still waiting.
On your end?
Yeah, I'm like on here as a viewer.
Yeah. It's going to be a couple seconds behind on your end.
Yeah, it says started 16 seconds ago. You check both cameras, they both good?
Yeah.
Here we go. Alrighty. It's a great day to be alive. I know the sun's still shining when I close my eyes. It's hard times in the neighborhood. Why can't every day be
just this good?
Man, how about that? What an intro. Yeah, no copyright infringement here. Hey, speaking of, maybe not copyright, but you getting that there, Serge? This is the we have a couple unofficial sponsors, and by unofficial I mean they don't pay us anything,
We just like their stuff.
but they can pay us if they would like. We have Dutch Brothers Coffee, brand new to Bowling Green over here. We have Prime hydration drink here. We have Spencer's Coffee over here. I'm double fisting with these two over here. And then today's episode is a special one. And in the background, you may hear our daughter, Miss Leah Locke. Today, for episode 17, I have my wife, Emily
Hello.
Locke, joining me on the
Hey.
podcast.
Hello.
We've kind of joked about this for a long time. And so the fact that it's actually happening is funny to me, but it's also really cool because we're making it happen. And it's something we've talked about, again, for a long time.
Yeah.
And today I think is a really important topic, and I think that you're the perfect person to have on the podcast for it. Non-biasedly speaking and biasedly speaking, just because you're a new mother, you are a licensed mental health therapist,
Yeah.
and today's podcast episode is mental health and motherhood. So I think that it's just it's just an important topic, two important topics to talk about: new moms, mental health, and how they coexist very prominently in a woman's life. And you've experienced it firsthand. I've seen it firsthand, in all the positive ways
and negative
ways. So yeah, I think it's a cool topic to talk about, something that is not talked about enough, candidly, especially. And when we were first talking about doing this episode, I had kind of landed on the title of surrendering to your mental health. And I was like, that just doesn't feel right. So I don't know exactly what I want it to be. And when Emily got here a little bit earlier, we were like, maybe like something with motherhood, mental health. So we settled on mental health and motherhood. So that's kind of what we're rolling with today. So like I said, this is my wife, Emily. Sergio is occupying our daughter as needed, so we're gonna switch camera angles as we can. But
I'm gonna go ahead and apologize because I'm probably gonna have to stand up and grab her.
Yeah, we're gonna have to grab her at some point, so she may either make an appearance in the podcast or it will have some small gaps. But we always joke because generally speaking, Emily and I are very opposite whenever it comes to being introverted and extroverted. I'm very extroverted. Emily is more so introverted unless you really know her. So from like a social perspective, we're very different in terms of putting ourselves out there. And something I'm guilty of, and even though I feel very self-aware and in touch with my mental well-being and my self-awareness, you obviously have a much more educated grasp on mental health, being a licensed mental health therapist. You have your undergrad. So real quick before I start spilling all your beans, let's let you introduce yourself. So talk about who Emily, I almost said Emily Arms, who Emily Locke is.
And that's so funny because we were talking about that last night when I was like thinking about how I'm gonna introduce myself. There she goes, she's crying.
Yeah.
In my head, I was like, well, I'm Emily Arms. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like I am, but I haven't introduced myself as Emily Arms in how long we've been married? Almost 3 years.
Yeah.
But so I am Emily Locke. I am originally from LaRue County, Kentucky, Hodgenville, Kentucky. That's where I grew up and went to high school, and it's a very small town, a very small area. So I kind of grew up knowing everybody, like the same people that I went to kindergarten with are the same people that I graduated with. So I did that, and then I did gymnastics, started in gymnastics at a really early age. I think like at 2, and then I did gymnastics competitively for a few years until about 7th or 8th grade. And I've always said, gymnastics is a grueling sport. To be good at it and to go far in it, you have to be very serious, very young. And so at the time when I decided to make the switch to cheer, I just wanted to, be more with friends, do more of kind of a team sport. So then I started cheering at my high school, cheered at the middle school and the high school. And then that's kind of where I found my niche. I'm like, okay, this is my thing. This is what I'm good at. This is what I like. And that led me to Western Kentucky. I wanted to cheer in college. I knew probably as a sophomore that that's really what I wanted to do. And so I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to really focus on. This is going to be my main focus. Like all of high school was cheer. So then I tried out at Western Kentucky in the fall of 2014. It'll be 10 years this fall that we tried out for the first time. So I tried out there and made the team, and arguably one of the best things that has ever happened to me. Made that team there and met this guy named Logan. And we hit it off, and then we started dating, and the rest is history. We graduated from Western, and I think I can speak for both of us when I say that we both just loved Bowling Green.
Mm-hmm.
We're both from small towns, and so Bowling Green was big to us, and like still a city. So we loved it here. And Logan got a job in college athletics right away, and then I kind of had a little waiting period where I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I took a semester off. Like I graduated with my bachelor's and then kind of took a semester off, and actually I helped with the Western cheer team as an assistant coach for a little bit. And during that time, I just didn't know really what I wanted to do long term. And then, I just kind of toying around with stuff and like looking into some stuff and just different master's programs. There's so many different things you can do. I landed on the counseling program at Western because I got my undergrad in psychology. So I knew I wanted to do something with people. I wanted to help in some capacity, but I just didn't know exactly in what way. So I got started on the counseling track, and I think that took me about 2.5 years. Did clinical mental health counseling, and then I also did a focus in addiction. Because before I graduated, that's what I thought I was going to do. I was like, I'm going to work at a rehab. I'm going to work with, people who suffer with addiction, all that kind of stuff. But I was wrong. I ended up working with kids. Yeah. Kids kind of stole my heart. I got a job while I was finishing my master's, working with kids on the spectrum. And I loved it. I was like, this is another thing that I did not know that I needed, but I needed it. And it kind of set me on the path to working with kids and being really passionate about kids and also their parents and working with their parents.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I'm at today.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. So I think, a big part of our story is cheerleading. If it wasn't for cheerleading, we would have never met. And I've said it multiple times on the podcast before that, I started cheering about halfway through my junior year in high school, knowing nothing about the sport, not knowing if I was even going to enjoy it or be good at it. It was just my cousin talked me into it, and I was like, sure, we'll give it a go, because she was on the team with some of her friends. And it was something that I loved and that I was good at, and I didn't really expect either of those two things. And about 4 or 5 months in, I realized this is something that, again, I'm good at, and it's fun. And so I started taking it more serious. And when I realized that there were opportunities to cheer in college, especially at D1, I was like, well, this is definitely something that I want to consider, because I already knew that I really was interested in WKU, Western Kentucky University. And we worked really closely with their cheer coach at the time, Tom Jones, who coached us at WKU. And he would come to our school once a week and teach, gymnastics and stunning and things like that. And he really pushed me to be a better cheerleader and to want to try out at the collegiate level. So yeah, we tried out the same year, fall of 2014. We cheered that whole first semester together, and we just were getting to know each other as teammates, getting to know everybody on our team. And then the second semester is whenever we were like, oh, maybe we're more than friends. And so January of 2015 is whenever we started dating, and we've been together since. And it was really special, and it's just a really different and cool chemistry in cheerleading whenever you're around the person that you're dating, and you're pushing each other physically and mentally, and you're trying new things from like an athletic standpoint. And it's like you have to really be intentional, because you can get hurt. And so it was really cool to we were doing like partner stunts together, we were doing basket tosses together, pyramids together, like group stunts, everything. And so it was really cool to like be young and new into college athletics and college cheerleading and kind of learn it together. Being the same age or graduating the same year, we were like learning as we both were growing. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun. So that's how we met. And so we came in, we started dating when we were freshmen. We dated all 4 years. And then after college, like Emily said, I got a job in college athletics at WKU. So we graduated in May of 2018. And then in July, I was hired as assistant director of marketing in WKU athletics, my first full-time job. And so kind of then and there, we were like, okay, we're going to be in Bowling Green for a little bit. Because at the time, I was totally sold on, I want to work in college athletics. I want to be an athletic director at a D1 institution one day. Like, that's what I wanted. And college athletics is just a very vast or very huge landscape. And there's a lot that goes on that you don't know about until you're in it. And then COVID, and then that partner with COVID really impacted a lot of it too. So yeah, Emily was an assistant cheer coach, and at WKU at the time, spirit programs, cheer and dance were underneath marketing. So I would help oversee cheerleading, dance, all that, which Emily was a part of. So it just made it that much more fun. So on game days, we were together on the sidelines, on the court. And then, we would travel together. I was going to cheerleading nationals. So we were just like constantly together, and we still had this like tight involvement with WKU cheerleading, that's what we wanted. And we still do, but in much
in a different capacity now.
Yeah.
Like, we're definitely still involved. We're very involved alumni, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how I like it.
Yeah, definitely.
Being a coach is very, very stressful.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes and a lot that goes into it that I don't think people on the outside know unless you've been a coach.
Yeah.
Or have been related to a coach. You don't really know. Like, it never stops. It's not a 40-hour week job. It's around the clock.
And even as athletes, like when we were cheering, we had no clue. When we were cheering, like we were really involved as juniors and seniors. I would say even sophomore through senior year, we were really involved with like the operations as a program and like helping with clinics and other things. But there is so much more that goes in to being a coach, to college athletics in general. And I think we both got a really heavy dose of that whenever we both graduated and we took on like larger responsibilities. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we got to see a lot that happened with the WKU cheerleading program whenever Tom Jones left as cheer coach and they started the hiring process. We were both really involved in that. And now Allie Lumpkin's here and Dalton Stanley's here, and they are amazing, and they've obviously grown the program to like crazy heights. But yeah, so that's kind of our backstory, how we've met, and we could like talk all day on that stuff. And fast forward, now we're sitting here doing a podcast with our 8.5-month-old daughter in the room. And Sergio is currently babysitting and working the cameras.
Yeah.
So bear with us on that. But moving on from there, this is something Emily and I sat down last night, and we kind of talked through how today was going to look in terms of the conversation and how I was going to go about it. And one of the first questions that I had for her was that I wanted her thoughts on ultra running and how powerful I've expressed how powerful it is for me. We're gonna have to pass Leah off here probably
So I can take her.
to Emily. But I've talked about ultra running in the past and how powerful it is for me from a mental and physical growth and just empowerment standpoint. And being the wife of somebody who does these ultra events, I wanted her to talk candidly on her thoughts on it as a wife, and then also as somebody in mental health, and just your take on it as a whole. And just love to hear what you have to think about ultra running as a sport.
Yeah. So I will preface this with I know what the research says. I know the research says that physical activity is good for your mental health. And there's a lot to say about it, but I am not one of those people. I mean, I definitely feel better when I get out and I'm active, but like the runner's high that you all talk about, I've never experienced it. I don't think I'll ever experience it. I really have no desire to experience it. um, so when you got into running, I did not think that we would end up here where you did like 100-mile race and all these ultras and MS Run the US and Last Man Standing and like all those things. Because I think you really started running in COVID. So my mom is a runner. And so my mom
That's what got me into running.
Yeah. So thanks, Mom. No, I'm just kidding. My mom is a runner and has run a lot of marathons. I don't know an exact number, but that's kind of where her, like, I guess, distance cap is just a traditional marathon. But she's kind of what got you started into that. And so you guys ran the BG half together, I think was the first race. And I was like, oh yeah, fun. So cute, whatever. And fast forward, I should have known because when Logan gets started in something, he goes all in. He like becomes obsessed. But we always joke that sometimes he cycles out. Like he cycles through these phases. Like one time in college, he really wanted juggling balls. And I was like,
I want to learn how to juggle. And I did learn how to juggle. Let's just go ahead and let that be known. I did learn how to juggle.
And he's like, for my birthday this year, I think I really want juggling balls. And I was like, no shot. Like, this is not going to last. But so we always joked, like, he kind of cycles through these phases. And we always joke that the one thing that has actually stuck is running. So, from a standpoint, like I said, I know the research says, that physical activity is good for your mental health. And so I think that is true. And I can relate to that as well. Like if I've had a bad day, or, I'm just stressed about something or I need to like think through something, my kind of mode of physical activity is I like to go on walks. Like before Leah, I would take Ruby on some walks. And I
Ruby's
would
our dog, by the way.
Oh yeah, Ruby's our dog.
Our first baby.
Yeah. Or I would do hot yoga, and I really liked hot yoga. That is kind of like my place that I would go and just like decompress. It's hot, it's sweaty. It worked. Like you have someone telling you what to do. I don't have to come up with the workout myself. All that. And so I think physical activity is very good if you are needing something, and it can kind of give you a purpose. It can give you a goal. I don't think you necessarily have to run 100 miles to be able to go through something or like work through something. But I do think, physical activity is good. And if you want to sign up for races, because like I said, it does kind of give you a purpose, the planning, the training is the really hard part. I think I even said it when you ran your 100-mile last year, is like this race was finished months ago. Like it wasn't finished today.
Yeah.
Like I've seen you or saw you go through all the training and the injuries and, just all that stuff. So I do think in that aspect, like having a goal and finishing it is good, for your mental health. And just physical activity alone, whether it's running, yoga, or just going on a walk, like just getting out in nature.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be crazy intense.
Yeah. And not even necessarily in a gym. I think just getting outside, like being in nature is good for your mental health. And just there's something about just the sunshine being on your face that I think is good for mental health and for clarity, just feeling good about yourself.
Yeah. definitely makes a big difference. And before we move on, I'm gonna throw this out there because I think I said something to Emily about this a couple weeks ago, but it drives me crazy whenever, speaking of like training and like the race being finished before. I mean, obviously you have to physically cross the finish line, but when it comes to training for an event, like you have to, or when it comes to finishing an event, you have to train in order to finish and feel somewhat normal and to get through the whole thing and experience the hurt physically and mentally and like feel, like I said, somewhat normal. And it drives me crazy whenever people like brag and put like on a pedestal whenever they just go and run a marathon or like a half marathon with no training. Like, yeah, I didn't train for this. It's like, okay, that's cool, but like,
That's the easy part.
do you think that was harder, or do you think it was harder for the guy or the girl that trained for 12 to 18 weeks for their first marathon and ran 40 miles a week or whatever it was, and then still finished the marathon? Like, that is way more challenging.
Yeah.
So if you, I mean, from the perspective of wanting something challenging and like mental growth, you're going to get a lot more of that if you go through the training and the process of what it takes to reach your goal. Just like I talked about on last week's podcast, I gave Kevin the example of, I saw this meme. It was like, looked like a newspaper graphic. There was like two tables and there was a line of people at the first table and it wrapped around like the building. And the table said, come to this table if you want to be successful. And the other table had one person in line or had nobody in line. It said, come to this table if you want to do what it takes to be successful. And I was like, that is a prime example of how people are. I mean, both of us have experienced that in some capacity. We love the idea of reaching goal A or B, but it's like, we realize, okay, do we want to do everything that it takes? Because it's going to be, you're going to have to give up a lot of parts of your life. You're going to have to sacrifice in a lot of areas. It's going to be difficult on a lot of days. Like, that's just part of it.
And I think that goes back to like our college cheer days too. Like everyone sees, well, we didn't have TikTok when we were like competing, but now like all these clips go viral on TikTok of routines or whatever. But you know, everyone knows that like college nationals is this weekend and everyone sits and watches the routines and this and that. And it's like, you can definitely tell the teams who have put in the work and the ones who have not.
Oh yeah.
And so, yes, it is great to be on the stage, but you know, we were in Diddle when they in the freezing cold because they shut the heat off because nobody was on campus. I mean, however many of us, like 20 of us, you know, that's where the win comes from.
Yeah.
The win does not come on that day. I'm going to decide to do it. The win, you've already won when you're like practicing twice a day. And, you know, a lot of us, when we were cheering, we're working.
Yeah.
So we were practice at 6 a.m. We'd go work a full shift at our minimum wage jobs. And then we'd come back at 6 o'clock that night and practice till Tom said we were done.
Yeah. Which is sometimes 10 o'clock.
Yeah. And then we would do it again. Like, but that's the process. And so I don't know, that's just kind of where.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like an example. Like, you can relate that to any aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about it from running for just like a leisure goal of somebody who wants to run the first half marathon or a 5K or whatever. But then also someone who's a college athlete. Like, it applies to any sport, right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing. Kind of moving on from there, like talking about cheer, like that obviously impacted a lot of our life. So, how did cheer impact you as a person? We kind of talked about this last night too. Like, from like a personal development, you know, from like a professional, even from work ethic, like how did being a Division I college cheerleader, how did that impact you, and how has it carried forward now?
Well, I think cheer, like especially college cheer, is much different than any other college like sport because most of the time you don't have a ton of funding. You don't have a ton of backing.
No.
You know, or scholarships. So all of us who were there is because we loved it and we wanted to be there. And like I said, we were also working. Majority of us were working like minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, like 20 hours a week typically.
Yeah.
I mean, at least.
And so, you know, then that was on us to communicate that with our bosses wherever we were working. And so I think number one, just scheduling and time management was a huge part. I mean, especially that first year, you know, you're in college, you're on your own. You're on your own. You don't have mom, dad, guardian, whoever to wake you up for class and to do this and do that. So you had to be responsible and do all that on your own. You had to show up to practice on time. You had to keep your grades up, because if your grades weren't up, then you couldn't compete, couldn't cheer
Right.
games.
Right.
Um, and, also I think where college cheer is a little different is we are kind of the face of the university. We're the poster. So when we go to these alumni events, we also have to be professional. We have to be able to talk about the university, be knowledgeable about that, and communicate with older alumni, just about what's going on, like the football team this year, the coach, the star player, whatever. Um, and the alumni really appreciate that. And then that's how they come back, because they feel, special. Then they want to donate money, all those types of things. So I think it's taught me time management. It's taught me responsibility. It's taught me hard work. And it also taught me, just because you work hard doesn't mean you're going to get what you want.
Right.
Like, you work hard and you could still not win. You can still fail.
Yeah.
But are you proud of the work that you put in?
Right.
And so I think that has really translated, into my life, and especially just being a new mom, like just showing up every day. I do this every day, and some days are not good, but it's like I have to go to bed and wake up and do it again the next day, because now somebody relies on me.
Right.
And it's a little different, because I had a bad practice, I'd come back in because my teammates needed me. But now, my teammates were important.
Human needs you.
My teammates were important, but now it's, somebody, a human, relies on me to keep them alive.
Right.
So the stakes are now higher.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of pressure. And so also that's taught me how to handle pressure, because, in cheer, all eyes are on you when you're on stage, competing or whatever. How are you going to handle it?
Right.
Are you going to fold, or are you going to stand up and take it on the chin?
Yeah. Take it on the chin, baby.
Take it on the chin.
That's one of my favorite parts about cheer that you don't get in a lot of other. I mean, all sports are obviously very high pressure, especially when you get to the college level.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, and they all are respective in their own stakes. Obviously, like a Division I or NCAA championship ring in college basketball might hold a little more stakes or recognition than winning UCA college cheer nationals, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
depends on who you ask.
Yeah, depends on who you ask. Like, to us, we'll take a cheer ring.
Yeah.
But I think that cheer, like, what was so important about it to me was, like, it forces you to be in a place of pressure and to feel the pressure. And like you said, you're going to sink or you're going to swim. And how are you going to take it? And those of you who don't know, like, in college cheerleading at nationals, it's a 2.5 minute routine, and you start prepping for this 2.5 minute routine. It's 2 days in D1A, which is what we competed. So you compete on a Saturday, and there's about 30, give or take 30 teams when you start on day one, and they take anywhere from 12 to 18 teams on day two, essentially. So you have to advance to day two, and each day you do the same routine, and it's 2.5 minutes long, and it's usually mid-January, like around the January 15th mark. And most schools, like, we would start prepping, we would start 2-a-days before Christmas. So basically,
around Thanksgiving.
It was around Thanksgiving. We would get out of school for Christmas break like mid-December, like, I don't know, December 15th-ish, and we would start 2-a-days like
finals week, usually.
Finals week, like that day, twice a day. And we would get about 3 days off for Christmas. And then you would do that. You come back like December 28th, and you would do that every single day until you left on like January 11th or 12th. And you go down to Orlando, Florida, and you compete for 2.5 minutes. So you don't have, and again, like, all sports are respective in their difficulty and the pressure, but you don't get 4 quarters, you don't get 9 innings, you don't get 7 innings to perform. You get one take at every single skill for 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, like, if you miss this free throw, okay, well, you'll make the next one. But in cheer, if you drop that stunt, too bad.
Yeah,
like, you don't get a chance to do it again.
Yeah. And so that's why I think the pressure just felt different, because you know that it's such a small window of time, and you do every skill one single time in the routine, and that's it, with usually a different person every time. So like Emily and I might have done a stunt in the first half of the routine before the cheer. Then during the cheer, I would do a stunt with another person, and she would stunt with another person, and then you do a stunt with another person later on in the routine. And so, I mean, you have to have chemistry with all these people, just like any other sport. You have chemistry with your teammates. But it's, yeah, the pressure just felt really different. So moving into the next thing, obviously on the podcast, I always ask people like, what's something challenging or difficult that you've been through? And I can always say you can share from whatever perspective you want, whatever life experience it was, no matter how good, no matter how bad. But we kind of talked about what you were going to share. And I think this still kind of, it keeps it relevant and speaking to like character, and kind of goes back to taking it on the chin and how you're going to react to that and how you're going to move forward. So what was your challenging thing that you've experienced and had to overcome, and how did it play out?
So besides childbirth,
Yeah.
because that is probably the hardest thing I've done.
Probably, yeah.
But so when I was a senior in high school, I started, looking at colleges I wanted to go to and looking at cheer programs and where I thought I could, make it, where I could fit. And like I said in the beginning, I'm from a very small town. And so by the time I was a senior in high school, I was like, I'm getting out of here. Like, I wanted to be as far away as possible. So I started going to cheer clinics, which is kind of like, I don't know, how would you describe a cheer clinic to somebody who doesn't know?
It's kind of like a workshop, like a camp.
Yeah.
It's essentially like a camp.
And so I would go, and I started going to ones at the University of Alabama. They have a really good cheer team and great game day, obviously.
Yeah.
So I started going to cheer clinics there, and I met some people who were also trying out. I met some of their current cheerleaders, talked to their coach. He was great. And then I would go up and just kind of, a couple weekends, I think I went up and just hung out and stunted and whatnot. And so I decided I was going to try out there. And so I went, and so some colleges you have to be invited to try out. Alabama was not one of those ones. And so a huge D1 school that you do not have to be invited to try out for, everybody and their mama showed up.
You can imagine how many people show up. Yeah.
So that first day, it was kind of like, okay, I think what they did was just kind of like weed the people out. Like some people were there that did not need to be there, that really had no interest in cheering in college athletics, like didn't really know what it was about, but wanted to be involved with Alabama. So I remember we went through that. I think we tumbled and stunted and whatnot that first day. So I made it through the first day. And so I was super excited. And then we go into second day. And so the second day we go in the morning. I think we did the fight song. We did some other stunts and whatnot. And I felt really good about it. I did good on my fight song. I did good on my stunts. I felt like I knew some people there. So I felt really good about my standing. And then after every session, they would post a paper up on the door with your number. And if your number was on it, then you were invited to the next round. If your number was not on it, then you were cut. And so I remember, my mom drove me up to the door, and I walk up and I'm looking at all the numbers, and I'm like, my number's not on here. So I, stood there and kind of looked for a little bit longer, and, I'm like, okay, I'm cut, I didn't make it. So I get back in the car, and I'm obviously upset, and I'm like, just disappointed. Like I wasn't, I don't know. I wasn't devastated, I'd say, but I was definitely upset because I thought I did a good job. Obviously I thought I had it, whatever. And so we get our stuff, because we had a hotel. And I remember I was, crying, upset, like, what am I going to do? Like, this was my plan. But all the while, I still had been coming to Western Kentucky clinics. And I was like, cheer has been my main focus for so long. Like, what am I going to do now? And so I remember being in the car on the way back to Kentucky, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself this day to be upset.
To take it on the chin.
And also it was also everybody at my high school also knew that I was going to go try out for this team, because tryouts were during prom. So I also did not go to prom because I thought I was going to be trying out and making the
Right.
Alabama cheer team.
Right.
So when I came back, then it's like you have to tell people you didn't make it and like all that stuff too.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to take it on the chin and then I'm going to turn around. And I think it was like that very next weekend were
Mhm.
Western Kentucky tryouts. And I was like, I'm going to try out at Western Kentucky and we're just going to see where this goes. And I go to Western Kentucky. I end up making it, obviously. And I think it honestly was for the best.
Yeah.
That was the best thing that could have happened
Mhm.
because as much as I wanted to be away from home, I don't think that I would have done well that far away from home. I don't know if I would have ever met you or
Yeah.
any of the other, people who I cheered with who are like my best friends, bridesmaids in my wedding, all that. So that kind of goes back to that was kind of my first lesson in you can work very hard
Yeah.
and dedicate everything to something and it still not work out.
Yeah. Or not the way you thought it would.
Not the way that you thought it would. Like I had put most of my eggs in one basket
Mhm.
and it didn't work out how I thought it would.
Right.
So that was challenging, but I just, and I credit a lot of it to my mom, honestly, because she made sure that I did not put all my eggs in one basket.
Mhm.
And she's very real with me from the get-go about, this could work out, this could not work out, etc. So I credit a lot of that to her. And she was the one, that was like, okay, you can take today to be upset, but tomorrow we need to talk about what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to sit here and cry all day.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. So yeah, thanks to my mama.
Yeah. Shout out to Kim.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a super important lesson. I mean, I think like anything that you are aspiring to do and you don't get it or it doesn't work out perfectly like you had envisioned it to, always is gonna test your character,
Mhm.
right? Like,
And then, like, not to cut you off, but
no,
then
you're
I
good.
was thinking, like when I turned around and helped coach
Mm,
and we get to tryouts, I have such a hard time cutting people
yeah,
because
you know how it
I
feels.
know what that feels like
Yeah.
to walk up there and not see your number.
Mhm.
And I mean, to see people get upset over that, it's like, I know how that feels, but also at the same time, I want to be like, if it's not meant for you, that's okay.
Right.
Something else will come of this. But it's hard to tell somebody that in the moment when they're going through it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I remember being there the first couple of times you were coaching and you were the one making the decision, you and the head coach to have to cut people. And it's hard, but at the same time, like you have to kind of remove um the part of you that maybe feels like it's a personal attack on somebody because
Yeah.
I mean, you were in that moment, it probably at some point may have felt personal, but then when you kind of sit back and reflect, you're like, okay, this was not personal. They weren't like, we just didn't like her. Like there were people that at the time had better skills that fit the
Yeah.
team chemistry better than I
Yeah,
did.
for sure.
And it definitely challenges your character. I mean, anything in life that you do that you thought was going to look one way, whether it's like a job interview or trying to get like a promotion, whether it's training for something physically. I mean, my first 50K I did absolutely wrecked me. And I remember it tested Emily still to this day was like, I was training for a 50K that was meant to really be like a training run for my 50 miler, which was a month later. And I finished the race and like was dry heaving. I could hardly catch my breath because it was a learning experience. And
Yeah.
that was the definition of like me taking a right hook on the chin.
Yeah.
I
I
mean, it
remember
wrecked me.
getting in the car and like calling my mom and being like, he's not gonna be able to do 50 miles. Like this almost killed him. Like there's no way we're gonna be able to do 50 miles.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you did it.
It wrecked me. It did. And that was my first true like humbling experience in my life that was like extremely physical and mental put together where I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to like do something like this again.
Mhm.
And it tested my character beyond anything.
Because you could have easily been like, that was too hard. Like I'm not this
Right.
50 milers not possible.
Right.
And then that would have been that.
Yeah. But I finished it up. I kind of after a couple days I reflected. I was like, okay, here's the things I need to do differently. here's what I learned from it. Like, you just had to, kind of like you did when you got cut from Alabama, like, you just put your ego aside and move on and see what's my next best option, or what can I do to get better or to improve.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a great example. And people can probably resonate with that a lot, because I mean, really, like, when that happens in the moment, that is just like the largest hit to your ego.
Yeah. And I think about, like you said, how you respond to that, because like it does feel personal, and I could, like I had said earlier, because I had gone and I had known some of the like teammates there and other people that went on to make the team. And, I talked to the coach and all that. So I could have easily turned around and been like bad mouthing them, or just like, tweeting about it, or, whatever. But I didn't do that. And my mother did not call and raise a fuss.
Right.
Like some people do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with that, like moving on, I make Western, I go to nationals with Western. I see Alabama's coach there and some of the other people that I tried out with, and they were fine. Like Alabama, he came up and talked to me, told me congrats. He was so glad that things worked out for me. And then every year at nationals for the next 4 years, him and I would wave at each other or talk.
Right.
And so it's just, if I would have raised a stink or been, I don't know, malicious about it, then that could have tarnished my name.
Yeah.
But
don't burn your bridges.
Yeah, don't burn your bridges.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, I did not take it personal. Looking back now, no, I should not have made it at the time. I was not, up to caliber of some of those other girls. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it all worked out. Kind of moving on from that. Like I said, we could go like all day.
I could go all day.
We
about
go all
cheer.
day talking about cheer. And we kind of already touched on like how you ended up working with kids in mental health. You said you had an addiction certificate when you got your master's degree. You did undergrad in psych. Your master's degree was in mental health counseling, licensed mental health therapist now. But when you got the job working with kids with autism, that is kind of what sparked like your love for working with like younger, like that age range of like 5 to 18 or whatever it may be. And so from there you went on, you got a job in a school working with middle school age kids, and then now you're in a job working with high school age kids. And so obviously all that has shifted a lot, and I've seen it change too, in like your investment with the kids as you become a mom. And we can kind of touch on that a little bit, but moving on, talking about motherhood and mental health and just maternal societal, how that looks is like maternity leave and things like that. Obviously the US provides arguably like the worst maternity leave protections of all countries. And we've talked about that, and we've said it a million times. Like, you do not think we knew that, but we did not think about it until it directly impacted us. And we see like, okay, we can't use short-term disability, so like, you're not getting a paycheck while we're like, just speaking candidly, like, you didn't get a paycheck for most of your maternity leave.
Yeah.
And because the employer didn't offer certain maternity leaves, because it's not required in the country. And then also like after your unpaid maternity leave is up, you have to go back to work.
Yeah.
And especially because you're not going to have the PTO to cover any additional time, and then finding childcare and all of those things. So we can go on all day about this, but how has that like lack of societal support impacted you? Like, I know, financially, time at home with our daughter, or as a family, childcare, like all that. How have you seen like the direct impact on that?
Well,
a lot.
Yeah. So I saw something, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but I saw it on Instagram or TikTok or something, and I agree with it. It said basically along the lines of like, being a mother is not the part that causes stress or that causes, burnout or whatever. It's the other stuff that comes with it. It's the financials, it's the who's going to watch the child, all these outside factors that cause you stress and then cause you stress in motherhood.
Yeah. Right now, Sergio's watching our child.
Yeah.
So
I keep like looking over, like whatever. But, so, and I think that's true, and I was very fortunate. We're very fortunate that, okay, my employer at the time did not offer, almost said free maternity leave. It was free.
It was free out of our
they
pocket.
Did not offer paid maternity leave, and majority of the places in the U.S. do not. So I did, FMLA, and I chose to do 12 weeks.
Which was the max amount you could do, correct?
Yeah.
Which FMLA essentially just protects your job
Job.
while you're gone on maternity leave. It
They
doesn't
can't fire me.
They can't fire you. It doesn't guarantee any sort of financial
Right.
compensation.
And it allows me to keep my insurance active while
Right.
I'm like not working.
Yes.
So I did that because I know, like, it was very important for me for like those first 3 months to be there, because the first 3 months of a baby's life is arguably the most formative.
Mm.
That's when, they form the attachment, the connection, all that stuff. So I really wanted to be home for those 3 months, and luckily we were able to do that.
Yeah.
But I know others who are not that fortunate.
Mhm.
They have to go back because they have to work.
Yeah.
They have to have a paycheck, and that's just really unfortunate. I think that's a problem in our society. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
I don't know how to fix it. That's above my pay grade, but it needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
So I think that, number one, is a problem, and then, I was able to have my 3 months, which was great. And then it's like, okay, when your 3 months is up, it's up.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, you got to go back to work
Mhm.
full time after I'd just been home
Every day
every
for 12
day
weeks.
for
Yeah.
12 weeks with my child. Now I have to go back to work, and I have to leave her in someone else's care. And we are so blessed with a
Again,
great
we
babysitter.
got so lucky.
But, it's terrifying,
Mhm.
because I remember that caused me a lot of stress
Yeah.
even before she was born. I was like, I don't even trust somebody with my dog.
Yeah.
How am I going to trust somebody with my whole life?
Mhm.
And, and that's a stressor for people. It worked out for us, but it easily could not have.
Yeah.
There was a little bit we were like, well, am I even going to be able to go back to work?
Right.
Because we don't
Yeah.
even have
We
a
don't have
babysitter.
childcare. Yeah.
So, I think it's affected me from all angles, because, I've said this to you before, and I'll try not to get emotional when I say it, but
Switch the camera so you
I
can stretch
know.
back. No, I'm kidding.
But, the morning of July 20th, which is Leah's birthday, the girl I was walking into the hospital
Mm.
is not the same girl that walked out.
Yeah.
Like, it changes your whole life.
Hell yeah.
And I think you can attest to that too. And so, just like, your whole worldview is different. And then after the maternity leave, you're supposed to go back to work, and it's just like, there I am.
Right.
Like, I'm supposed to go back like everything's normal. And it's very hard. And it's very hard to navigate that, because you have all these emotions. Your hormones are crazy, and you're trying to sustain another human life,
Right.
while also figuring out what your new role in life is.
Mhm.
So I hope I answered the question.
Yeah. Well, and I think
it
like,
affects every single part of your life.
yeah, and I think make a note that like the point of like talking about these things are not to
Scare
find
people.
well, not no, I'm saying not to find a solution and be like, or even like spark the conversation like, what do we need to do to change these things? Like, obviously these things need to be changed, from maternal leave protections, like for moms and for parents in general, but it's to just like really just show like that it's a real thing. Because a lot of times, when we would tell people like, yeah, we're doing 12 weeks, like you're getting 12 weeks of maternity leave, they're like, oh, that's awesome. It's like, yeah, but it wasn't easy when you went back to work. So I think the point of this is to show and talk about and like bring the topic up and show other parents and other moms specifically that like, you're going through the same thing. Just because it looks a certain way, you see other moms that maybe to your portrayal, like they look like they went right back to work and it was amazing. Like, chances are it's not like that with every mom, right? Like, that's the whole point. And like you said, trying to navigate like sustaining another human life. But one thing I think that, and we'll get to in a second, like we wrote down notes for this specifically, is like, you're not only learning to be a mom, a dad, but you're also learning to be a wife in a new way and a husband in a new way. And I think that's something that we, again, are very open in our communication, and we have had multiple hard conversations. We don't care to have hard conversations, but like navigating being a husband in a different way has been really challenging. And I know you can say the same thing for being a wife in a new way is really challenging. And so as new parents, it's been hard to find the right way to go about that. There is no right answer, and that's just another way of us like candidly speaking about that. Like there's no perfect solution. We've been through it. We're still going through that stuff, and it's hard to find time together that isn't helping our daughter, that isn't the 45 minutes we have laying in bed after she's asleep before we fall asleep. Right? Like that's obviously really challenging. So 8.5 months ago, we became parents. And I'd like to go through some of the changes that we've experienced and how we've navigated those, which is, we said last night, I'm reading off my notes here. Emily was like, make sure we say it's still a work in progress.
It is still a work in progress.
It is
ever changing.
Ever changing. Yeah. But I think that the things that we'll talk about through here is from our personal experience. And yeah, it's something that we're still working on, and it looks different almost every single week. Like what we're saying, like how we're finding quality time together, how we're communicating, what our expectations versus reality look like that all looks different on a week-to-week basis. So the first thing that I wrote is quality time. And I think we've really found quality time in a couple of ways. Two ways I'll highlight is in the mornings and evenings. And then the other is we've been, I guess I don't realize how lucky we've been until we start talking through all this stuff too. Like is leaning on our family if you have your family. But I think like the mornings and evenings have been our go-to time when it comes to getting quality time together, right? When you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, even in the mornings, like when we're getting ready for work,
Yeah.
I feel like we still, I don't know, find that time to kind of talk.
Yeah.
Like as I'm getting ready, you kind of take her and get her ready. And then, we do our song before we get her in the Nuna.
Yeah. Center.
So I think that, and we just kind of go over our day, like what's our day going to look like, or, and then I feel like we have done well about, if there are those like off days where, I'm, in Bowling Green or, vice versa, we'll meet up for lunch.
Yeah.
And that's a good flexibility that you and I have sometimes both in our jobs, that we're able to just meet up for lunch without the baby, without anybody else, just you and I.
Yeah.
Even if we do spend the whole time talking about Leah, looking up pictures at Leah,
Yeah.
But I think that is good. And, in the evenings too, I think but I can also say we have gotten better about putting her down.
Yeah. It was hard in the beginning.
It was hard in the beginning. I felt like I, always had to hold her, always had to have her close. But now, she's getting bigger. She's a little bit more independent.
Yeah.
So I can like put her down and we can have a conversation or, watch a show while she's playing or, whatever. But that comes with time. In the beginning, it wasn't, like the first 3 to 4 months, there was no quality time.
No.
I think the one thing we did was we went out to dinner on your birthday and that was it.
Yeah.
But I think it's gotten better as time has gone on.
Yeah.
And it's been easier for us to leave her with people too.
Yeah, definitely.
Like for a date night or for dinner or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, again, like that all comes with time. I think that, and the things that I'll touch on here have been huge for us. So I'll like quickly go over I'll speak to it and I'll let you chime in too as well. But the communication and having hard conversations, I think, is really important, and being able to have that open line of communication when having a kid. It's so funny, like a lot of times you see like TV shows, or even, I mean, it's a real thing that like some people, their intention of having a kid is to like grow your relationship with your spouse or your partner more. But if you can't communicate effectively, like that could totally have the reverse effect.
Yeah.
Like it really could. And we've always been very open in the communication. If like I feel a way about something, if you feel a way about something, we've always been open to having those hard conversations. But also I think we're always checking in with each other.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've learned through you, is just checking in, like literally the simplest questions of like, how are you feeling? Like, how are you, like, how was work today? Or how are you feeling right now? Like, not keep, like, it's a very vague question that can go a long way.
Yeah.
Especially when your life has just completely changed with something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's one thing that we're really, really good at. Whenever it's, a lot of times it's hard to have those, like, or ask those tough questions when it's just like one-on-one in like a very intimate setting. It's like, it's kind of uncomfortable, but you just have, I mean, that's part of having that open communication, is being able to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Right?
And I feel like we were really good about that in the beginning.
Yeah.
Just being like, how are you doing? How you doing today? You doing okay today? How are you today? I wish we I wish we kept a tally of how many times we asked each other that just in those 3 days in the hospital.
Or after that, when we got home, how many times we asked, "Is it okay if I?" Even now, is it okay if I go shower?
Yeah, like I'm now having to ask permission to go shower. It's like things just change and it changes your relationship too. And I remember that was something I was really worried about.
Yeah.
Like, because I did feel like we were in such a good spot and we were so good. And I was like, I know this is going to change,
Yeah.
but like, I want to make sure that we're good. And so I think, having those talks before she was born about this is what I need, this is what I feel like we need to keep up with was beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and just like continuing that, because like you said, I think we kind of got to a point 3-4 months in where it was like we talked about this last night again, like you had the things you did for her, I had the things I did for her, and that can kind of get exhausting because even if I were completely free and I wasn't doing anything in the moment, but you typically did something for her, like I don't know, laid out her clothes after her bath or like folded her clothes and organized whatever. But if I were free, instead of me doing that, you would just do that habit. You would still do that because that's how it was.
Yeah.
So having to be like, sit down and be like, okay, if you're free, like I need your help with this.
Yeah.
And so having that open line and being okay with it, which speaking of, I may have to pass her off to me or Emily now. Speaking of the baby, we're going to pass her off. Here she comes.
Hey.
What's on your head? And then we'll kind of wrap it up here, but these two things kind of go together is expectation versus reality, and kind of having no expectation, I think was important for us. Before Leah was born, we had said that we were going to have no expectation. Sorry, Serge. I'm snapping at Sergio to switch our cameras. I'm like bossing him around behind the microphone. Sorry,
We're
Serge.
putting Serge to work.
Yeah,
today.
we really are. He's had Leah he's probably sweating bullets taking care of her. She's been up and down in her playpen, out of it. But I think just like having no expectations was really important for us, because whenever she was here, people would ask like, "Oh, what's your plan for this? What's your plan for like getting her down for like bedtime?" Like even still to this day, we do not have like a set time frame of like, okay, she needs to be laid down by this time. She needs to be doing this by this time. When we go out to eat, we're not going to do this. Like I think ridding those expectations, majority, not everything, obviously, has been.
You still want to have like your main
like
points,
values and
yeah.
But I think ridding a lot of the expectations was helpful for us, and then kind of going with that was something that not everybody has to do this, but Emily and I, obviously her being a mental health therapist, we are very open and passionate, I guess is the right word too, about taking care of our mental health. And so we both go to therapy. We both have our own respective mental health therapists. And we also, if we feel like we take something that's impactful or helpful from a session with our therapist, like we'll share that with each other.
Yeah.
And one thing that I took from a therapy session, I'm not going to name drop my therapist, but hey, what are the odds you're watching? If you are watching, let me know next session, because we still apply this to our daily life.
Yeah, I'm
How
jealous.
funny would that be, actually?
I'm kind of jealous that I didn't come up with this.
Yeah. How funny would that be if I go into my next therapy session, my therapist is like, hey, by the way, you're welcome. I heard you on here. No. But one of the things that I took from one of my therapy sessions was surrender to this moment, was like, just be open to surrendering to this moment. And we do that almost every single day.
Yeah.
And so what you can take that as is like a lot of times for me, and actually where it stemmed from, let me get some context, is when I would be at nighttime in the beginning, it's just really scary. Something about like having a very small child or something so small and fragile, and like and like nighttime hitting just makes it amplified and like more scary. And anything else, Leah?
I know.
Just makes it like more scary. And so in the beginning for me, it was like everything was amplified at nighttime. And so I had like a lot of anxiety set in at nighttime, and it was just like overwhelming. And hearing like, just surrender to that moment and know that it's not going to last forever. And I think that has been so important for us. And we've used that in multiple areas of our lives now, being parents. because there's a lot of hard moments throughout the day
Yeah.
and throughout the week, throughout the months, and they won't stop even as they get older, I'm sure. And so learning to do our best to surrender to a moment and tell ourselves like, okay, this is not going to last forever, has been so helpful for both of us.
Yeah. And I was so glad that you shared that with me, because I have felt like that in, a lot of moments, when sometimes babies just cry,
Yeah.
and it's just like, this really sucks. Like, she's fed, I've changed her diaper.
Like, what is wrong with
What
you?
is going on, and not trying to fight those moments or to wish those moments away. Just kind of be like, this is this moment, and this is just how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to, rid myself of the expectation.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go off her, I mean,
Yeah.
this is how we're doing things now. That has really, really helped a lot.
Yeah. And honestly, it's almost like a weird
Comfort.
like comfort and like freedom, because at nighttime, like we don't have a nighttime routine. Like
No.
I think we don't have a set routine, but we kind of operate within the same window most nights now throughout the week. But yeah, it is like the sense of like freedom and comfort, because you're just like, okay, like if she falls asleep during this time and she wants to take a nap, we're gonna let her sleep and we're gonna spend some time together. Like it's hard to explain, but yeah, when you read the expectation and just kind of learn to surrender, I think that it also makes it easier for, like, it's been easier for Leah, for us to not try to force
her to sleep.
Force her to go to sleep, or force her to like do this routine every single night, because I mean, there's been times where she sleeps for a week and she doesn't wake up, as far as I know, right? She doesn't wake up.
She never wakes.
Where she,
as far as you know, she never wakes up.
She sleeps through the night every night. No, but there's been times where like she'll go a week and she'll wake up like once throughout the night, and sometimes like she sleeps through the whole night. And then there's some weeks where it's like she's up 4 or 5 times, and sometimes more. And we surrender to that, and we're like, okay, this sucks, like this stinks in the moment, obviously, but we know that there's more good times to come, of more times of her sleeping through the whole night, and there's gonna be more of this, and just being open to that.
Yeah, and something that I know I keep referencing my mom, but she's been a really good rock for me, especially. But when I get in my head about like, oh well, she's taking a passy too much, or this or that, my mom's always like, she's eventually not going to take a passy. She's eventually gonna, just speaking of her getting older, she's eventually gonna eat food. She's eventually gonna pee in the toilet. Like, just don't be so hard on myself and so hard on her to like make her meet these milestones. Right. Or, we don't have a bedtime routine. Like, she's eventually gonna sleep in her own bed.
Yeah.
Like,
if you let her.
If I let her.
Yeah.
No. I mean, she's not gonna be 30 years old and sleeping in between us.
Right.
Like, she'll eventually meet all these milestones, and so just to take each moment as it is.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing we found too, is like, as she's like 8.5 months old now, is, I mean, every day it's like she's picking up something new. She's like in the middle of trying to like crawl and move around on her own. Like every day it's just like she's on the move. That's why we had this like little baby playpen thing here, because we just can't contain her cage, we call it. We can't contain her. And so it's like I think we're in a pretty good place where we're like not wishing away each day, and we're starting to understand that like these moments are special. And I think we do a good job of maybe it's a good thing, but a bad thing also, that we like lay in bed at night, our quality time we do it by looking back at pictures of her, like you said
in the beginning.
Yeah, from the pictures in the beginning, the first couple weeks and month. But yeah, I think that's all stuff that has helped us. Like the 2 biggest things, I will stand by it, is like rid your expectations on everything. Like some things, obviously, when it comes to your values and how you want them to be, and like that's understandable, right?
Yeah.
But like surrendering to the stuff that is just hard, and not putting expectations on that. Like, I'm going to be able to soothe them every way with this, or they're going to be crawling by this age, or they're going to be not taking a passy at this age, or like it all looks different, right?
Yeah. And like, comparing your child to other people's children, not everybody's baby does the same thing at the same time. Like, I don't know, like you can't look at, your graduating class and look at everybody that graduated, and you can't point them out. Like, this one took a passy till they were 8. This one didn't use a passy at all. Like, this one was breastfed. This one was formula fed. Like, it matters, but not really.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we went a lot longer than I expected to there talking. I mean, we could go all day
May
about
have
this
to be a
stuff.
part two.
We have to do a part two. We finally broke Emily's silence.
Yep.
But just want to kind of wrap up. And I told her this last night. Leah, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Mama,
Dada?
shut up.
So one thing we kind of said last night was, or I told Emily that I was gonna kind of put the ball in her court here, was if she had a message to the world, and we had kind of said, like whether you're a mom or a parent or not, obviously reaching out to a therapist or mental health professional is always useful, or somebody you trust. Doesn't have to be like a mental health professional or a therapist, but it's always going to be helpful, and it's going to be useful in your life. But other than that, aside from that, is there anything that you want to add, or any message you have to the world?
I mean, I feel like we could talk about this kind of stuff forever. And I know, especially I could, because it's relevant to me and I just went through it. I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the thick of it.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is, like, if you're a new mom or if you're a mom in general, like, you're not alone. And, we need to support each other. Moms need to support moms, and dads need to support dads. Like, it is such a big life change. And I think it's okay to say that. I think some people want to focus really hard and keep their life the same, or do all these, same types of things, or, make it look like this, I don't know, Instagram picture perfect,
Yes. Yeah.
Life. And that's not the case. Like, we joke all the time about how I need to do a TikTok and be like, a day in the life, and this is how it really is. But no, and I'm very guilty of that. Like, looking at what other people do, and like the people I follow, it's like, okay, well, they have this, they have that, and she's not sleeping, their baby's sleeping,
Right.
whatever. And it's just hard. It is really hard. And I think for a mom, you need to give yourself grace too. And that can be one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
I saw something that said, like, high achieving women, or high achieving, women, girls who just do a lot, when they do become a mom, they suffer from, like, postpartum anxiety the most, because they're so used to being productive,
Right.
and that's kind of what drives them. And then when you have a newborn, it's like, okay, everything stops. And you are being productive, but not in ways that you were before.
Right.
So, and I think just, giving yourself grace that, like, okay, maybe I'm not cleaning the house, doing the laundry, or running 50 miles,
Yeah.
but, I'm keeping someone alive.
Yeah.
Like, I'm creating a life, and I'm healing my body by being slow.
Yeah.
And taking the time that I need. And so, I don't know, I just got off on a tangent, but
Hey, go ahead.
But just being there for each other.
Yeah.
And going through this process, I have learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about just the world. Like, my view on life is much different than it was July 19th, 2023.
Way different.
Way different than it was then. And I'm excited, for what's to come. And I can't wait to see her grow and to see the person that she becomes. And I think, like you said earlier, we are very blessed. And so I don't want to, like, just talk about how, all that stuff without acknowledging, like, I know there are single moms out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I know there are people who have babies who have no family support.
Yeah.
And, I see you, and I acknowledge how hard that is. Like, it's hard on me, and I have family support and good support. And so I know that there's people who don't have that. Like, I acknowledge my privilege in this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just, I think we all just need to rely on each other and help each other out.
Yeah.
And be real.
Yeah.
About it
That's
all.
the biggest thing. Like, I think it's really easy for parents and moms especially to get discouraged, especially when they're at home with the baby still, because you see like maybe a daily routine of a mom, and step what, but we're wrapping up, Leah. We promise. Maybe you see like a daily routine of a mom, or a day in the life of how they go about their day with their child or whatever, and it can be really discouraging. So yeah, I just want to put that out there, put that message out there, and we're gonna wrap it up so we can end a good conversation, but also
Get this one under wraps.
Get this one under wraps. So thanks for tuning in.
This is real life.
Yeah, this is real life right here. If you want real life, watch this. Watch the YouTube live stream of this podcast episode. So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in to our second podcast live stream, episode 17 of Adapt and Achieve. If you're listening on a podcast platform, thanks for tuning in for another one, and we will catch you next time.
Bye. She knocked over my Stanley.